You know that line. That's Brian O'Connor, right? But the real star of that moment, it wasn't just him. It was the car that would pretty much become his trademark, a legend that was about to be forged in Hollywood fire.
So this is the story of how one movie franchise grabbed a legendary Japanese sports car and basically launched it into the stratosphere, turning it into a global icon. We're not just talking about a cool car in a movie here. We're diving into how a film literally created a worldwide obsession. All right, so let's dial it back to 2003. A sequel is hitting theaters, and with it, an on-screen debut that was going to change everything for the Nissan Skyline GT-R.
When Too Fast, Too Furious hit the big screen, it didn't just feature this Bayside Blue R34. It, worshipped it. Remember those slow, loving close-ups of the engine? Those unmistakable quad taillights? That massive wing? The movie was telling you, without saying a single word, that this car was something special.
Now, to really get the impact, you've got to remember what was going on at the time. In the US, you had your muscle cars. You had your European exotics, sure. But the R34 GT-R, that was on another level. It was the ultimate forbidden fruit, a car you could drool over on screen, but had absolutely no chance of buying at your local dealership.
And here's why. It all comes down to this, the 25-year import rule. It's a pretty straightforward piece of federal law that basically put a giant keep out sign on the R34 for anyone in the United States. And just like that, it went from being just a car to a mythical beast that car lovers could only dream about.
So, that first movie? That lit the fuse. But the franchise was just getting started. Oh yeah. They spent the next decade turning that little spark into an absolute inferno. And they just kept building on it. After the R34's big debut, Tokyo Drift took us right to the GT-R's home turf in Japan. Then, get this, just as Nissan finally launches the next-gen R35 in America in 2008, what happens in the 2009 movie? Bam! Brian O'Connor is right there, behind the wheel of the new one. The timing was just perfect. And that connection was reinforced film after film, right up to that emotional tribute in Furious 7.
It was just this brilliant full-circle moment, wasn't it? The franchise builds up all this insane desire for a car that's illegal to own in the States. Then, the second illegal version finally hits the showroom floors, they put that new model on the biggest stage in the world. Seriously, you couldn't write a better marketing plan if you tried. But this was way more than just a successful movie car. The fame it got on screen had this tangible, kind of shocking, and incredibly valuable effect in the real world. We like to call it the Godzilla effect. I mean, it's a fair question, right? Can a series of action movies actually change how much a collector car is worth? Well, the answer, as you're about to see, is a big, loud yes. The numbers here are just staggering. Seriously, back in 2003, an R34 might have set you back around 25 grand if you could even find one. Okay, now let's fast forward to today. The 25-year rule is up, they're legal, and that average price, it has skyrocketed. We're talking 10 times more, $250,000. And that's just the average. This isn't just normal appreciation, folks. That's the Fast and Furious effect.
And hey, if you need the ultimate proof, look no further. The actual hero car from Too Fast, Too Furious, yep, the one that started it all, it sold at auction for an absolutely mind-blowing $1.3 million. Unbelievable.
This impact created whole new businesses. Suddenly, there was a huge replica industry selling movie-accurate parts. You had fans literally counting down the days on their calendars for that 25-year rule to expire. Import companies saw a huge boom. And get this, even Nissan itself said the films played a part in their decision to finally, officially bring the GT-R to America.
But look, the money and the market, that's only half the story. To really, truly understand why this car's legacy is so powerful, you have to look at the human element behind it all.
See, that passion we all saw on screen? It wasn't just good acting. Paul Walker, the man who brought Brian O'Connor to life, was a real-deal car guy who had this deep personal love for the Nissan GT-R. He wasn't just playing a character, he was living it.
His own garage had multiple Skylines in it. And that authenticity, it just came right through the screen. We could all feel that the connection between the driver and the car was totally real. And that made the bond between the fans and the car that much stronger.
And then, after his tragic passing, the franchise gave him one of the most emotional send-offs in movie history. That final scene, man, with the GT-R and the Supra driving their separate ways,
That moment just transformed the car from an icon of speed into this powerful symbol of tribute, of friendship, and of legacy.
So where does that leave the GT-R's legacy today, all these years after it first showed up on screen?
Well, let's just say it goes way, way beyond the movie theater. Okay, let's break it down. In the car world, its successor, the R35, has been in production for over 17 years. That's almost unheard of for a sports car. In video games, it's the must-have hero car in Gran Turismo, Forza, Need for Speed, you name it. Culturally, the movie's made its nickname, Godzilla, a household name all over the world. And maybe the most important part? The kids who were watching in that theater back in 2003, well, they're the collectors and owners of today.
In the end, the franchise and the Nissan GT-R they're forever intertwined. It was this perfect storm of on-screen charisma, that real-world forbidden fruit appeal, and a genuine human connection. It all came together to create something much bigger than just a movie icon. It created a legend that's going to echo in car culture for generations to come.